Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talk About It Tuesday. I'm Tosca Di Matteo, founder of Tosca Coaching and Consulting. Sorry, I'm switching my headset there, realized I didn't put it in. And I'm excited to be here with you and have Randi on my show. We've collaborated in the past before, and I'm super excited to talk about truth. And before we bring her on, I just want to share that I use this platform to bring different voices and perspectives to all of you so that you can find your way into your personal development, growth, and living your best life. And I'm so excited to have Randi on because she has been through her own journey on honoring her truth. And so let's bring you on so you can introduce yourself. I'm just going to request you now. Remy, so good to see you. And this is an interactive platform. So if any time you have questions, feel free to chime in. Hi, Randi.
Hi, how are you? So good to
Hi.
be with you today.
It's so good to be with you today. And it's like I'm feeling very October. I put on like my orange shirt and everything, and like it's,
My shirt, so we're coordinated. We could
I
hang
love
up
it.
back.
Yes. Welcome to folks joining. I'm excited. Oh, and Ashley's been to like the chat and choose that we did in the past, and that's awesome. So yeah, so I'm glad we're able to collaborate in this way, and I think the topic that you're passionate about, truth, is something that I'm also passionate about. So before we jump in, I just love for you to share with everyone a little bit about your background, like your life, like what you want to share about who you are and what brings you here.
So I'm a transitional life strategist, reinvention expert, and I'm a keynote and a media influencer. And this is my third chapter. I spent the better part of 2 decades in corporate America in fashion buying and merchandising, and then had a recalibration to a second chapter as a SAM, as a stay-at-home mom. And what I thought was going to be a short gig was a long gig. And when it was time to recalibrate that once again, I knew that I wanted the founder space. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur and thought I was going after my MSW and stumbled on coaching and went back to school, got certified, and I'm now in year 8 as a transitional coach, third chapter. And I work with and inspire and help women who are founders or entrepreneurs or in various stages of transitioning their life in redefining success, in realigning and redefining legacy as a power tool for choice, for change, for self-leadership, as reflective of who they are right now. Really important ingredient, because where we are right now, that's our truth, and that's what we're discussing today.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. And welcome Dr. Jackie Black. Hello. And Payne Associates. And something that came up that I'd love to ask you about is like in your life right now, like how are you defining success?
Oh, I think one of the absolute golden nugget of this whole pandemic situation has been, for me, redefining boundaries,
Mm,
aligning my rule book, if you would, personally and
mm,
professionally. What sticks, what goes, what works, what isn't, what do I want there to be or not be right now, and remembering and re-remembering why I do what I do, not only
mm,
to help and support other women, but why do I do what I do as a founder, and what privileges, if you would, or what advantages are there for being in that space, and really examining that as my truth and trusting in what that is, so that those
mm.
decisions that I'm making are really reflective of the business that I want now, of the life that I want now. And I think that's really important. It's an important message for all women, whether you're in corporate, whether you're in private sector, whether you're in transition, or whether you're full speed ahead. Stop for a moment and allow yourself to redefine what's really going on.
Mm. Oh my gosh, I love that. And welcome, Shige. Good to have you here. She's actually on East Coast time, normally on London time. So that's fun. And so, yeah, so I got to tell you, this boundary, I want to dig into boundaries if you're comfortable with that.
Sure.
And it's crazy, like synchronicity, because I literally had a dream last night that was about boundaries, and I was talking to my therapist this morning about it because I dreamt about my house, like it was my house that had no walls on it.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I didn't like connect it to boundaries until I talked to my therapist. I was like, oh, but it was below the surface. Like I don't know. I think boundaries is always a thing for me. It's like I didn't necessarily have great examples of boundaries growing up. So, and I think that in the work that I do, and I know you do too, like it's so hard for people who are not used to holding boundaries to start that habit. So, what can people like? What can people do on their journey of creating boundaries that serve them? Like, what suggestions do you have?
Well, first of all, I think I love your dream. I love the visual that I'm getting because what is possible if one wall's down, if two walls are down, if three walls are down, if all the walls are down, what can you do?
Mm.
Right? So I think that that's just a remarkable way of looking at things. And sometimes people say, oh, boundaries, that's heavy. So
Mm.
don't call it a boundary, call it a rule. We all have rules, right? Rules that
Mm.
we follow, rules in society, rules in business, rules in our personal life. Take a look at how you're going to mix up and reassort the rules so that they work for you. Because if we're doing what we've always done, we're going to get what we've always had, which may or may not work for who we are right now.
Mm.
And truth and trust are a big part of that. Think about the fact that we want to trust our significant others, our spouses, our friends. We want to trust our boss and our organization that we work for, our clients, right? Those are important things. But the one person that we need to really trust the most is ourselves. We got to start there. So the key to all of this, the key to those boundaries and to those rules and feeling confident in all of that is to start with that self-leadership piece. What are those walls? What are those gates that we're keeping up? Where's the door shut and where does it need to be open? And really
Mm.
examining that from the reality of what really is, not from what we've done before, what we said we're going to do, but where we are right now. And it's a fresh eye approach to what that is. And there's such an advantage to being in that moment. One of the things I like to work with people on too is if they get stuck in those rules and those boundaries, what you're really getting stuck in is fear.
Mm.
Story. And so think about what is the worst thing that could happen. What's the worst case scenario? Just kind of write it down. If I were to do this or if this were to happen, what's the worst? And then write down what the best case scenario for whatever that situation is. Your truth isn't either of those. Your truth is right smack in the middle. It's the marriage, the intersection of the worst and the best. And that's that piece where you can look at it and say, okay, so how do I poke holes in this? What really makes sense here? And how can I lead with that?
Mm. Yeah, I mean I think that's interesting, right? Like where is truth? Is it in between? And also I want to say welcome, Jorge. Good to see you on this platform. We went to school together, or I'm sorry, we worked together, and I think that there's for me my journey and boundaries is there's a difference between holding a boundary and keeping your heart open. Like so I think that sometimes we get confused around like how is it serving others when we hold our boundaries? Because I think some people feel like they're at odds with each other.
I get it. And so think about where your head and your heart both combine in your decision making and kind of lead with that so that it's not just this hard, fast, has to be inflexible, this is it. But where does this serve my clients? Where does this serve my family? Where does this serve the people I
Mhm.
care about? And where does it serve me? Because you're part of that equation.
Yeah.
So busy helping and supporting everybody else that we forget about that. So we want it to be reflective of where we're at, but we want to do it in the nicest way possible and the most inclusive way possible for other people. So I think sometimes looking at how we say something. So, very often we may say something like somebody may say, well, could you meet with me at whatever time? And we may go immediately to, oh no, I'm too busy. I'm just really too busy. But, I'd love to, but I can't do it. Another way to say that same thing is, wow, I'm really abundant right now. And, not but, and I really would like to meet with you. So here's the time that I have for forward facing on that. I can do so on this date. See how that expands So I think sometimes the way we say something can make somebody feel included and part of the equation versus, okay,
Mm.
the hard stuff.
Yes, and I just want to bring out even further this idea of, you know, how we remove ourselves from the equation, and I think that's how we fall into resentment, and that's how we end up with these horrible boundaries because we've totally removed ourselves, and then it's like a practice to put ourselves back in as the
Well,
most important part of the equation.
we're doing what we think we should be doing or what we think
Mm-hmm.
somebody wants to hear or what we've done before, and it doesn't really serve us today. And just because your boundary may be this right now today in October of 21 doesn't mean that's the same rule that you're going to necessarily follow on the same situation in January. I'm not saying we're flopping around, but be reflective of where you're really at, what your timing is, what your agenda is, what your goals are, how you're running your business, where you want balance in your life. Look at all of those things and be in the moment on what those rules are and what those boundaries are and what your truth is.
And I'm speaking of your truth, and I'm curious about your journey with all of this. Like, you talked about transitioning into a different career, transitioning from at stay-at-home mom to launching your own business. And so, how has this showed? I'm just curious, like, how did you get through your transitions in honoring your truth and your boundaries? Because it feels like this is so core to what you teach others.
It is, and we learn by making mistakes. So, first transition out of corporate into the mommy space. Lots of women do that. But I had this storyline going on in my head that I couldn't do this and that I
Mm,
couldn't be this super mom and this super executive at the same time, that I
mm,
had to choose one. Now, I chose the good one, the right one for me in that moment, obviously. But it definitely was my story. And it was,
mm,
maybe fear of not showing up for my family or fear of not showing up well enough for my organization or whatever
mm,
that was at the time. And kind of punched holes in it over those years. And then coming out of the mommy track, well, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew I wanted to be in this space, to have a voice, to be a thought leader. But I kept saying, well, wait a minute, who's going to take me seriously? I haven't worked in how many years?
mm.
Worked a lot. Haven't worked.
Yeah, of course.
Um, when I did finally make that decision to jump into the coaching arena, and I was on the phone with iPick Coaching, and they're busy taking my money. The admissions person said to me at the end of the conversation, as I was signing up for my coaching certification, she said, "Start." And I remember hanging up that phone, Tosca, and saying, oh, yeah, right. Who's going to take me seriously? I have not done this. I haven't been an entrepreneur before. I'm going to start coaching people before I've taken a class. And I immediately shut it down, which is something I hadn't done before. And I said, you know what? I've got this. I have no clue, but I've got this. I can start. Because there were
Mm,
150 things that really came to mind of things I could do before I engaged in my first class. And guess what? I started that very same day. There were a
mm,
million things. I could get a business card. I could decide what I'm calling my business. I could, set up networking. I could set up a LinkedIn. I could, think about what I wanted a website to look like. A million things I could do. And I started doing them. And I had my first clients before I took my first classes.
mm.
So when we get out of our own way and we really discover what's true is, and my truth in that is that my whole life has been preparing me for this.
Mm.
And if I went like this and looked away from it and told myself all these stories, I'd still be trying to oh yeah, maybe once I have my whatever. And so now I
Mm.
work with women who are caught in their story so that we can move through that and really execute on the things that you really do have and you really can do. And it moves mountains. You just move
Mm.
more quickly through everything you're doing because what you're doing is you're erasing a little bit of that fear, right? You're poking some holes in that fear and you're discovering what really is true for you. You're smarter than you think. You've got more than you think here.
Yeah, and it just also sounds you know, like deconditioning from the messages that we're told about what has to happen in order to do this, like the order of operations or, you
Right.
know, the And so much of that is getting debunked now anyway.
The walls
Yeah.
on the house, right?
Yeah.
So if we permit them to all stay up, we're going to stay where we are. And maybe that's okay, but probably not, because we're all meant to change and evolve and grow, right? But if we allow even one wall to come down and peek out, it all changes the equation.
Mm. Yeah, because I think what you're we can look at boundaries in two ways, right? We can look at it in terms of we're putting a boundary up, a wall up, that because that's going to serve us, but also taking the protection down, so that we let in what's meant to come in, and not be driven by fear and scarcity, and you know the stories that we tell ourselves that aren't true.
Right. So
So
it's one
it's,
of the best ways to circumvent fear is to allow yourself to peek out a little bit from what you've been doing or what you're conditioned to do or what you think is the right thing, versus what maybe you want to be trying or want to be doing or doing differently. And kind of make that calculated move. Start the flow. Take the little steps that you can take to something so that you are living more truthfully in what is making your heart sing
yeah,
and what is giving you energy.
yeah. Yeah, and I want to remind the folks that are watching that the amazing thing about watching live is you get to ask questions to these life experiences, the experts, experts on transition. So if you guys are out there and you're like, you want a little support, want a little help, leverage this time we have with Randy because it's precious. And and I'm curious. I know that you're also in your own transition, and so I'm curious. You've been teaching about transitions and recalibrating, and now that you're in it yourself, like, is there anything that you're discovering, like, about when you're actually in a big transition kind of phase? You know what I mean?
Well, a lot of things change around you. There's little whispers, so to speak, of things that are going on. Some of them are personal sometimes, like weight loss or eating differently or exercising differently, or you may be more curious about something, or you may be showing up less in certain arenas. So take a look at, what you're responding to and, what's going on for yourself personally. And then the professional piece, where are you getting joy? Where does something feel heavy? Just because we've done it that way doesn't mean we have to continue to do it that way. Is there a new version of what that is? Is there a side hustle that you've been thinking about that maybe has more life than you're giving it? Or is there something as, look, the pandemic has reassorted how we do business. And so maybe you're working from home and you're figuring, okay, I want to make that jump into another organization, or I want to make that jump to work for myself. Take a look at what you can do to start that up, to be in motion on that. It's just always a series of a lot of little steps. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Eden, I have
Yeah.
a comment.
Yeah, Ashley is charming. She says, I'm in a big transition right now. It's scary and thrilling all at the same time. How do you keep yourself focused on moving through the journey and tracking towards your objectives that serve you?
Good question. Good question. Um, the best way to stay true to the journey is to stay in the moment. Now, it
Mm,
doesn't mean that we don't have goals. Goals are always in the future because we're always striving to get to them. But the more you can empower the 24 hours you're in, the more that you're going to stay in the process and in the flow of what's really going on. So
mm,
you're going to push those walls a little bit if, oh, today I really enjoyed doing that. I didn't realize I would enjoy doing that. Or I tried something differently today and it worked. Or this isn't working. And you're going to start to really look in at what's really going on because your energy can only really be used today. We can't use energy from yesterday. Yesterday's done. We can't use tomorrow's energy yet. We're not there. So use that 24 hours and get more attached to the process than the results and look at where your successes are. So where are those small wins? Where are those things that did go well for you? We're all attached to the goal. I didn't get the goal. I didn't, get the bonus or the raise or the client or the whatever it is. And then we feel like we failed. That's not the case. because you did many things that got you to a specific point, and a lot of those things really did work. So we want to be looking in at where the successes have been, so we can lean into more of that and celebrate that, and feel more elevated about that. And that's a really good way to try to bring you back into what's really going on today.
Mm, that is some golden nuggets of wisdom right there. Thank you for that. And it brings up the word surrender to me, because I, I'm sensing I'm sensing that you are very action oriented, and you help your clients like take action. And I'm curious where the surrender, like, like where does that play for you? Or like, how do you work with that concept?
I happen to love that word, but not necessarily the dictionary definition of it. I'm all about rewriting the definitions of things.
Love it. All right, give it to us.
We think about, okay, they surrendered in the war, they gave up, the other side won, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we think about giving up and quitting, right? I'm thinking about surrender as allowing, permitting, right? What are you allowing in? What are you coming to terms with? Understanding about yourself, understanding about your business. Where can you flow in that a little bit more? Maybe it's not something you've done before, or maybe you're embarking on yet another chapter in something. And giving yourself space and grace around that idea of surrender. Surrender doesn't mean we're perfectly still when we're resting and we're bonding and walking through nature. It's part of surrender. But surrender is coming to terms with what we can allow in, and how we want to define that, and feeling good about that.
I love that. Yes, allowing it. And it brings me to this and yeah, Jorge, it's like, yeah, lean into the small wins. Oh, it'll change your life. I think that changes your life and I'd love to hear your perspective on this too, Randy, which is like, when we spend so much time focusing on the stuff we're not happy about, and then when we get the wins, we just dismiss it. We don't even pause on it. We barely let our foot step into it, let alone celebrate it, right?
Exactly. And that's something I want to create a new habit around. Work with my clients to create habits around success, because we ought to go to what didn't work, or what we think may happen, or where that fear lays, or what happened before, and none of those things have truth in them, and they erode our confidence instead of building our confidence. So if we look at it and we say, okay, what have we done? Where have the wins been? What's made us smile in that? Where have we found joy in that? Whether it's business or personal. So you're one person. I want to just, throw that in there again, because people tend to get really like, oh, but in my business, I can't. You want to look at all of you, right? And focus on what's working, so that you can build out more of that, celebrate that, pause for that, reward that. Okay. Again, it brings you to the process, it brings you to the moment, rather than the mountaintop that's out there tomorrow. Doesn't mean you're not moving toward the goal, but guess what? The goal may have changed, and we don't always give ourselves space for that to happen. So sometimes we're working toward a goal, we're so engaged in it. And if we were to look up and take inventory, we'd realize that goal isn't even important to us anymore. It doesn't even make sense. But we don't stop long enough to do that. Yeah.
And I just want to say thank you, Dr. Jackie Black, for coming. I think she had to jump off. Great to have you here. It's like it's so true, and I want to pull that nugget of wisdom out that you shared, right? Which is that oftentimes we kind of compartmentalize and isolate, and we say, oh, I got to fix the relationship thing in my life, or oh, I got to fix the career thing.
Or I got to wait for the website to be done, or I've got to wait for my first set of clients, or I got to wait to do X program and have it launch. Sometimes we over beta test ourselves, and we got to just kind of go with, allow the flow, allow the wall down. I'm going to stick with the visual.
Yeah, and also that information from different parts of our lives can help in the other areas, right? That when you say, oh, what brings me joy when I'm interacting with my friends, can help you understand like what will bring you joy in your work environment, in your career pathway, right? Like,
Exactly. And we don't examine that. We think, well, that's, so I'm the big piece, and where I like to coach people is in a whole life. So even if we're working on building out a business or having you become a founder or re-engaging you in the next chapter, we're looking at all of you. Because everything affects everything else. What affects you personally affects you professionally, vice versa. And you kind of want to look for those whispers and for those signs, because you can string them forward and really have them work with you and for you.
yeah, and when I'm thinking about right this idea of our truth, and I think what happens so much is that seemingly paradoxical things are true at the same time, right? It's like I love Brooklyn and I want more access to nature, right? And so how do you decipher those what's true within the paradox of what you desire?
Why can't they both be true?
They can both be true, but then how do you make decisions in a direction or the, you know what I mean?
That's a balance issue, definitely, of
Mm,
looking at, what are the variables that you want in your daily life or in your life on a weekend versus a weekday, and how do you want to incorporate that? And if you're loving Brooklyn, well, Brooklyn has a lot of parks and Brooklyn has a lot of rooftops, there's opportunity to be in nature. It's not the country, it's not
right.
suburbia, but you can, work it and rock it a little bit, without having to leave town. And you can
Mm,
also realize that where you're building in those escapes, that they speak to that nature and that more remote vibe for yourself. I know that you had spent time in Vermont,
yeah.
and you know, places that we seek out, we want to be mindful of, okay, what do I get from that? What does it do for me?
Mm,
How do I feel in that environment? And making that something that you're doing, if it's not in your everyday, at least it's in your plan, maybe monthly, maybe quarterly, at least annually, so that you're bringing that forward and staying true to what that is. But truth is really intuition. It's intuition in action. It's you allowing yourself to say, okay, what makes me come to life, and how do I do that? And you know what, so many people have made so many bold choices during the last 2 years, based on exactly what you just said. Well, hey, I really
mm,
love the city, but now that I can work remotely, I can live in Ishkabibble. I want to live in Ishkabibble, so I'm going to move there. I've seen so many people move all over the place, or
mm,
really grab hold of the fact that they can be remote, or
mm,
just the reverse of that, saying, hey, it's been too remote. I want that city,
mm,
urban,
mm,
I want those people. So, being mindful of where you intuitively feel at your best, and
right.
seeing where you can bring that more closely in alignment with your life and your business.
Yeah, I love what you're saying is like saying, okay, when two things are true, how can you bring more of one into the other and experiment and
Right.
say, oh, this actually brings me closer to the and than the or. And and it makes me wonder too, right? In terms of making changes, because sometimes let's just take an example of like someone who's in a certain role in a certain company,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, oh my God, I'm so done, right? I'm so done. I gotta change, right?
Have to take
And
for this.
right. And I think sometimes people miss the opportunity to actually explore what's possible where they are. So how do you,
Love that you just brought that up.
yeah, tell me about that.
So
Let's talk
right.
about it.
So now. It's so now, because it's always been a thing, but it's just
Mm,
come to life right now. And
mm,
the thing, really take stock of what you want. And yes, there's that fear. What if they fire me? What if I lose that job? What if it doesn't go well? But what is it you want? What do you want to ask for? They can't read your
mm,
mind. So
mm,
if you don't mind coming in, but you want to come in 3 days a week and not 5 days a week, or, you want more flex time, or you want, more money for X or less, you don't care so much about the money, you want to be in a certain location. or you want certain autonomy to be doing something within your job that you've always wanted to do, this is the time, because companies are in motion, they're switching, they've got half an ear open more so than before. They're looking to please a little bit more because they too, just as you may be afraid of losing that job, they may be afraid of losing you. And the same thing is true in an entrepreneurial space. Evaluate who are the clients you want. Where do you want to say no to a speaking engagement, to a commitment for something? What really rings true with where you are right now, so that you are creating those rules and those boundaries around what's true for you. And get clear on it. Make some lists. If nothing were holding this back, what would I want there to be here? What would make this more valuable to me?
Yeah, and as you're talking, I'm thinking about Sarah from the Now who's joined us. I'm not sure if she's still on, but I know she's gone through this herself to say, how can I make my situation work for me with all of my dreams and goals and aspirations? And, rather than, throw the baby out with the bathwater and just
Literally.
experiment and just experiment with asking.
Right. Well, people just assume, oh, well, if I can't do the job the way it's been done before, they're not going to want me to do the job. And that's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
And, we have a lot of stale roles, or a lot of really stale job descriptions, if you would, out there. And then we start living that staleness, and that's where we get stuck and unable to feel gratified by what we're doing. So sometimes it's simply saying, okay, well, I like what I do, but I'd like to call it this, or I'd like to also have responsibility for that, or I'd like to have less responsible, or want somebody to delegate to. So maybe it's time I ask for that intern, or I ask for that assistant, or I ask for that virtual assistant, or whatever that may be. So think about where the asks are, because that's your truth, before you jump. And see what is being said. For some people, that may mean that they want to feel more secure in where they could go. Not everybody wants to shift and say, okay, now I don't have something. So you may want to align up something else. You may want to start a side hustle, with an intent for something. And I tell people this too with the side hustles. They're like, oh, well, where do I get to the point where this becomes my full time? What elements of that side hustle, if any, and very often there are many, align with what you're already doing? Where can you maybe bring some of that into your current position? Can you try certain programs out? Can you dispense certain information? Can you work with a client around something you're working on in privately? So there may be ways where you can have symmetry between things that you're doing more so than you're giving yourself autonomy for.
And this part of the conversation especially feels super vulnerable, right? To share your truth and to make an ask, knowing that you could be told no, or
But the answer anyway, if you don't ask, the answer is no.
yeah. No, 100%. But I could see how some people may be like, it could feel worse, right? Like it could feel worse to be denied something that you've spent a lot of time figuring out is what you want or what you need.
Success piece again, right? If you put your weight in the success, the ask being the success, the fact that you're asking, the fact that you're doing something differently, the fact that you're showing up for yourself, the fact that you're clear and have clarity on what you want, those are successes. That doesn't mean that if you're rejected, so to speak, you're not going to feel as a human a bit of rejection or a little bit of a setback. But it's going to allow you to take next steps.
Yes.
So that staleness you're feeling, or where you may feel like stuck, you may feel burnt out, this is going to allow you that freedom to try to do something about it.
Yes. I want to highlight that.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. What were you going to say?
No, same time.
I was going to say I want to highlight, I have these conversations all the time, and I'm sure you do too, which is that we have to define success within what we can control. Because if we are defining success by how somebody else responds to us or what their reaction is, we're just never going to.
Right. Or by it being, you actually getting that thing. Well, that's fabulous. If you ask for it and you get it, hooray.
Right. Cherry on top.
Let the balloons, fly.
Right.
But if you ask for it and you don't get it, you've got perfect clarity. You know that that's not going to work here. That
Right.
now you're freer to make another decision, a
Right.
move perhaps to another company, to explore, more about your side hustle, to do something a little bit differently. You know where you
Yeah.
stand. And
Yes.
that's the truth.
Yeah, and I share this story sometimes, which is maybe more, maybe not in a public forum, but in my very last job, I asked myself, what would it take to stay? Right? I kind of knew it was time to go, and I was just like, what's it like? What would make me stay? And I was like, okay, if I could propose a job description, right, that was different than what I was doing, because I wanted to do culture work. I said, okay, I'm going to propose this, and that did bring absolute clarity because that I did propose it, and I was, encouraged, but it was also like, and that's not going to be possible right now. And it was like, okay, well, and I was clear that I didn't want to wait another however many years to figure out if like the next regime or whatever was going to happen was going to like, um, open the door for that. And so that you're right, like it did bring me a lot of clarity on like, now I know my next step has to be not this.
It's like the road opens.
Yeah.
And you may still stay where you are for a while, but
Yeah.
you may not. Or you may
Yeah.
stay where you are and start something else, or start,
Right.
go back to school or get a certification in something, or build
Right.
onto something that you wouldn't have taken those steps to do
Mm.
to grow if you hadn't asked,
Yeah.
hadn't gotten that clarity. So it can never not serve you ultimately. It may seem um, daunting at the time, particularly if you
Mhm.
don't get the exact result you're looking for. But
Mhm.
try to separate from the result, even though that's the thing you're asking for and what you
Yeah.
want. What is possible? Stay in the fact that you're opening a door, you're creating a pathway, you're creating some rules a little bit differently. You're pushing the walls out.
Yeah. And so much of what we're talking about is that work that we're doing on ourselves, right? That work
Mhm.
that of our clarity, of our truth. And look, I know that you bring people together in the process of transition. So I'd love to hear more about maybe even your own personal experience in going through transitions. Like, what else do people need? Like, what's a part of that equation of giving yourself what you need and setting yourself up for success during transition, because I personally believe that doing it on your own is not setting yourself up actually for what.
Well, thing, and you're leading right up to what I was going to say. Get the
Yeah.
support you need, and
Yeah.
whether that's a mentor, whether you're going to, intern someplace and find something out about something, or research something, or sign up for that class, or whatever it is. Hire a coach. Here we are, two of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Step into a space where you get validation and can
Mm.
really stay purposeful and accountable to what it is you're doing, and start. Don't be afraid to take those first
Mm.
steps.
Mm.
If you're going to need to write in your new role or present in your new role, sharpen your skills in those things. Start writing, even if it's just simply on LinkedIn. Find the avenues where you can make some inroad, and
Mm.
then reward yourself. Be really clear that, oh, I wrote that article today, or I did
Yeah.
that thing, or I made that call, or I looked up that person that I knew. And that's the other thing too. Don't discredit what you already know, and don't discredit who you already know, because there's
Mm.
so many people that we all have in our arsenal of life, personally and professionally, that we don't always um, interface with or show up with. So, go back in. If you're in transition, you're thinking about something, who does that thing that you're thinking about?
Right.
Who do you know already who's in that? When I was thinking about coaching, I didn't know anything about coaching. I didn't really know anyone who was a coach. So I started asking people, who's a coach? Who do you know? Who
Right.
likes it? And I started to make phone calls and talk to people who had gone through the program that I was signing up for, who were out there doing this at different stages, 2 years out, 4 years out,
Mm.
8 years out. What did that look like?
Mm.
If you could give me one piece of advice, what would that be? So inquire and
Mm.
get really clear on some of the things you're thinking about, and bring validity to what that is.
I love that word that you use, validation. And you know and also rewarding yourself for what you are doing when you're playing bigger. And you know, validation can be tricky, right? Because we like having an over reliance on external validation is not necessarily healthy.
Mm-mm.
And at the same time,
And
sometimes,
yes, your truth is
yeah,
out there with somebody saying, "Hey, nice shirt, Randy." That's nice.
right,
They like it. That's a great compliment. It makes me feel good. But what's important is if I like my shirt.
right,
So that validation has to come internally to the external. It has to be self-led.
yeah, yeah, and I think part of like if we're going out and we're trying new things, to your point, right? Like if we're like, oh, I really want to do this thing, that how can you like, which I think you've talked a bit about already, right? Which is how can we give ourselves that experience in some way, and then we are validating. Oh, right, yes, I fuck yeah, I'm good at that. Part of my language, right? But like, even if it's like, you
Right.
know, gosh, I really want to like teach a yoga class, right?
Right.
And then you teach it, and then you're like, right, I can do this. But it
You
just
can
like
do it. Right.
builds the confidence and the confidence, which that word hasn't
Exactly.
come up yet. But I'd
But
love to.
right. And it doesn't have to be because you may want to now be teaching yoga. It doesn't mean you have to physically open a studio in a brick and mortar.
Right,
Right. Our minds automatically go to, well, to be successful, I have to do this. Well,
right,
why don't you start by doing this piece,
right.
right? I have a client right now who, is already in business for herself, is looking for next, what that next transition is, that next
Hmm.
business.
Hmm.
And rather than jumping in and building another mountaintop, she's doing a pop up. She's trying something that just seems fun to her for a couple of months. Just to try it on, just to see how it makes her feel, just to see, what happens with it. It's an idea. So take the ideas and allow some of them to be.
Yes.
Hold on to them really tight. Free them.
Right, and I think what you're saying, and because sometimes it can feel so heavy and big when we're trying to make big
And
changes,
then
right?
we
And I
don't
think
we don't do it. We sit on it. We
we
wait.
sit on it, and I think what you brought up is a great like way to think about it, which is how do we bring, which I'm kind of extrapolating, but like how do we bring joy and play into our desires so that it feels less heavy and we can actually have fun with it and experience the joy of it. And that might look different than what we think the next step is.
Usually does. That's
Yeah,
the
it's like usually never is the
off center a little bit because like this can't be like the next thing or this is
right.
how is this going to get me there? But it's playing with the ideas. It's allowing yourself to
Mm,
be innovative. It's
yeah,
allowing yourself to try something that you've never tried before, do something differently, and
yeah,
not worry about what your best friend says or your sister says or even your husband says because what's important is what you say.
yeah.
And allowing yourself the freedom to try something is always a success because the
Yeah.
win is in the doing.
Yes. And oh, okay. So I keep getting all these sparks. So what you're saying is really making me think of the concepts of, and everybody's a bit different about what they need in order to like really embody and feel what it's like to be in that whatever transition. So whether it's okay, you want to get a new car for the first time in your life, go test drive a new car. You want to see what it feels like to live by a beach, go stay by a beach for a few days.
Exactly. Try it on,
Try it on.
right?
Yeah.
Not everyone loves I love to shop. Not everyone loves to shop. So for me, it's always about trying it on. How does it
Yeah.
look? How does it make me feel? What could I do with it? How could I accessorize it? What
Yeah.
are those variables to it? So, but if I didn't try it on, I wouldn't know. I mean, I would buy it if I didn't like try it. So
Yeah.
try on the things that you're thinking about in some small way. It may be you're reading a book about it. That's the starting point of trying it on. Uh,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. I would love to pose a question to the audience for those of you willing to share. What is it that you want to try on? And maybe if you have a hard time, like, oh, I don't even know how to try that on, maybe we can help you think about ways to try that on that doesn't feel like this huge, process. Or this huge, like you said, oh, I want to go to Spain. Okay, read a book about Spain. Put yourself there, right? Like,
Take an
learn
online
Spanish.
Spanish course. Go eat in a
Yeah.
Spanish restaurant.
Yeah,
Learn
totally.
some way, right where you are,
Yeah,
as a starting point, and or plan that. What would that look like?
yeah.
Okay, maybe I'm not putting the credit card down yet, but if I were to go spend time in Spain, is it 2 weeks? Is it a month? Is it a week? What is it? What cities would I want to go to? Set the itinerary,
Cool.
put it in motion. Do you know other people who want to do that?
And you know what? I'm gonna be real honest. Like, so I have oh, Ashley's saying I would love to write more, so I'm taking a course for script writing. Love
I love,
that.
I love it. And you know what? There's no downside.
Yeah.
You're going to write. You're going to start freeing up thoughts. You're going to feel more confident in your writing. And if for some reason you decide, hey, I don't like writing so much, well, you know that because you tried it on.
Yeah. And so I'm curious. So Shige is saying I want to try a new job, a career change. So what can she do that's small, maybe without to feel what it's like to be in a new job without actually without having that job yet?
Go look in your LinkedIn. Who do you know?
Hmm.
Go look in your alumni association. Who do you know? Who does something that sounds like something you want to
Yeah.
do?
Yeah.
And talk to them.
Yeah.
So is this as glamorous as it sounds? What's the upside? What's the downside? What would I need to know to get started in this? Find out more about it. Be inquisitive.
Yeah.
Um,
And even I think like finding ways to do that work on the side, whether that's volunteering or finding a project, or maybe that's internally in your job to say and even and I'm just going to skip to like Ashley or yeah, Ashley saying I would love to have a role that would allow me to travel. And I'm like, you know what? We're in virtual environments. Could you go bring your laptop, go bring it to somebody else's house, even a friend's house, a family, or go to a Starbucks, whatever. And although I'm a big proponent of local, but I'm just saying, like, but actually have the experience of working in different locations, even within your own town, to
I
give
love
you a sense of how does it feel to be in different environments when I'm working and not in my office or my bedroom or wherever I
it.
am.
Or, plan that. So if you're in a situation where you are virtual, well, who
Yeah.
said to be in your apartment in New York City? You're saying that. So if you have the latitude, to rent a house or to stay with somebody who has a house and you're thinking beach or you're thinking mountains or you're thinking West Coast or you're thinking South, make that move for a couple of weeks. I'm actually doing that.
Yes,
I learned
yes.
doing that in November and December, and I will be working from a other remote. My business is virtual anyway, so I am just adding another layer to that and going out west to forge a trail. And
Yes.
just try it on. So, how does that feel to be someplace else?
Yeah.
And do I like this place as much? And my business stays my business, but I'm trying it on differently, and
Yes.
that's the only way you can really know. You don't necessarily have to pull the plug on something completely. You can take
Yeah.
steps and you can see how you feel about it and evaluate what you like and what you don't like. Yeah.
I love that. I'm going to share something personal too, which is, my husband and I have just kind of like evaluated like very, light touch, like, oh, where else might we want to live or where else might we want to be? And we visited a house for the first time a couple weeks ago. And I realized, you know what I did? We went to this house and it had spectacular views, kind of like, and I shut myself down. I shut it down. I was like, nope, I gotta not want this. It just like
Whoa, 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 whoa. I don't want to coach you here. However, that dream you just had is the polar opposite of what you just said, right? So you came to this site, you saw
yeah,
this potential place, and for whatever
right.
what came up, fear, which we could dive into, but there were fears there. There were reasons why maybe not. And then you have this dream that the walls are down.
Yeah, and so and I know like it was kind of sticking with my husband to this place that we saw, but it's just kind of like not exactly ideal, but like the views were like this open air, just like right expansiveness. And so I said, you know what? Why don't we go look again? Because I realized I shut myself down from even allowing myself to want that. And I share that with everyone because
But
I think we do this all the time.
all the time.
And because that's our truth. My truth was that view would be spectacular. To live somewhere with that would be so fulfilling
How
and
much
would,
energy then does that then bring
Yeah.
into your day and
Right.
into your coaching and into your writing and into your exchanges with people you care about?
Right.
Wow, right?
So yeah, I guess I bring this up to say, like, for folks, where are you shutting yourself down? And also, where are you actually reflecting on what really got you excited? For example, Shige is saying, like, yeah, have a chat, tap into my network. Yeah, and when you get off those phone calls, like, really sit and think about what words did they use, like, what was exciting about what you learned about that job, that career, or that what person's experience, and not shut that down and say, oh wow, crap, I was really excited about this thing, but that just, if it feels so far off, or like or imposter syndrome comes in, sometimes we shut it down and then don't honor, like, actually that is what we want.
Exactly. So, do the investigation.
Right.
Ask, be curious, be in the moment about it. If you have time to shadow somebody or, meet with somebody on a weekend even to learn more about something, or you want to take a class in it.
Yeah.
Everything is online now. What could be easier than
Hmm.
taking a class in any topic we want to? The entire universe, every university internationally is open to us like
Yeah.
never before. And, there's so
Mm.
much out there that if you can tap into, I think it's this, take a class, get a certification, even if it's a short thing, or even if you don't feel like taking the class, what's on the reading list for the class? Maybe you want to read those
Hmm.
books.
Yeah.
Try to figure out more, challenge yourself to learn, because it's a
Mm.
lifelong skill, about what those next things are so that you can have some movement. And all of those little pieces that you're doing, whether it's phoning a friend, whether it's, going through that LinkedIn, researching, working with your alumni association, whatever that may be, those are all wins. Those
Yeah.
are all successes. Those are really positive action steps that you're taking towards something. The
Well, I
something
think it's interesting. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. What were you saying?
the something doesn't have to necessarily be defined from the start, and I think people get caught in that
Right.
too. Well, I think I want something different, but I don't know what it is. What do you think it
Yeah.
is?
Yeah.
What do you like to do? What are you good at?
Right. And it's funny because, as you've been sharing, like, this counsel and advice, right, about, like, going and learn something, take a certification, and I think, it's like, oh wow, that feels like, oh, that's something we would tell, like, 20 somethings to do, right? Like, but as I'm thinking about it, right, it's
Yep.
like, it's about creating new imprints. It's about believing in new possibilities, right? And it's not about putting
Right.
the obstacle in front of us, right? It's not about
Exactly.
saying, I have to do this in order to do that. I think it's coming from a different place for you.
Exactly. It's not. It's letting go of the traditional pecking order of things. I'm not saying you're not going to come back to that. I mean, obviously, if you want to be a doctor, you're not going to do that without going to medical school, right? And having
Right, right,
all of those things. However, if you wanted to be a doctor, well, do you want to be a doctor? Talk to some doctors. Who do you know?
right,
What kind
right.
of doctor do you want to be? Why do you want to be a doctor? Is there some other part of medicine that you may be
Mm,
able to explore that may get you similar, sooner, quicker, easier? Um,
right.
what is it you're really looking for in all of that? Allow the transition to happen and allow yourself to show up so you see how you feel about whatever that is. It's never, ever too late.
Mm.
I am not a big proponent for the word retirement. I don't really think it's a good word. And we live longer. We're more connected. We're smarter. We're savvier. We're all independent in stuff now. It's not our grandparents or our parents' generation, and so we're not necessarily going to stay in that same job, get the watch, and retire. So
Right.
that next
Oh
big
my God, get the watch.
thing,
Yeah, when does
right?
that happen
Buy
anymore?
yourself a watch and find something you want to do. Because golf may seem great, but it's not going to be great if you're doing it every day. It's not even going to be fun anymore. So explore what is possible,
Mm.
from any standpoint, whether that's going to pay you money or not pay you money, whether it's personal or professional. What are those things that you've always wanted to do and allow them in?
Yeah, allow them in. So how do people get in with you? Because for those that watching now or in the future, like, how can they stay connected with you if they're vibing on you and want to learn more about how they can be supported in transition?
Sure. So they can tap into my website at randilevincoaching.com. You can reach out to me via email at randilevincoaching.com. Always happy to set up a virtual coffee and chat about what is possible. And I have two offers. One is my personal success accelerator system, which is a system that taps into discovering your successes and making a habit out of that. It also includes a session in it, and that's available at randilevincoaching.com/. PSAS for Personal Success Accelerator System. And I have a freebie. So if anybody would like to, think a little bit more about leading and self-leading, which is all reflective in what we're talking about today, I have a leadership challenge, and that's available at randilevincoaching.com/leadership, or you can text the word recalibrate to 22828. Recalibrate to 22828. That's it. And thank you so much.
So many goodies.
As always, I so enjoy conversations with you. They're inspiring and intelligent and have so much wisdom and so much to give. So thank you so much for
Oh my gosh.
joining me today.
Well, thank you so much. I received that, and I so appreciate the work that you do and, the message that you instill to help others to live their best life, to go after their dreams, to not play small, to
Mhm.
play big, and to honor their truth. And I feel like it's like the key to life, It's like if you could get to and honor your truth, you're gonna be all right. You're gonna find your way.
And I just want to make one more point on that, which we touched on.
Yeah.
I really want people to understand that your truth changes.
Yes.
What may have been true when you were coming out of college or graduate school may not be true in your 40s, 50s, or 60s. What may be true pre-pandemic may not be true now. What may be true today may have a little, shift in it by tomorrow. So be open to that.
Yeah.
You're not stuck in your truth. Your truth should be an evolution.
Oof. I'm so glad that you shared that. That's so important because I think we think we're wrong. We can easily think we're wrong if we realize we actually want something different than we wanted
And we're done
before.
with it. I don't want to think about it anymore because, oh, well,
Yeah.
that wasn't true. Or what's true is I should stay with what I'm doing. Well, maybe it
Yeah.
is, but you should look at it again maybe tomorrow because maybe it's not so true.
Yeah.
Stay fluid.
Stay fluid. Yes. I gotta write that. I'm writing this stuff down for my show notes. Anything else? Anything else you want to end on and let people know about this topic about you? Anything at all before we say goodbye?
No, I think that we've covered a lot of material today, and I'm always, like I said, love to work one-on-one and talk one-on-one with people. So feel free to reach out to me. There's a calendar under Let's Talk tab on the homepage at randilevincoaching.com. Feel free to tap into that and set something up to talk further if I can be supportive to anybody. I'm always looking to be a resource as well. You can also join me in the Recalibration Network on Facebook. It's a Facebook group where we talk about topics like this and have monthly interchanges and circles. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for your time, for
So
your energy, your wisdom, and I am excited to hear how things go when you go out west and try that on for size.
exactly, and that's what it's really all about. Is just finding those opportunities, creating those opportunities. It's not even finding them; they're not there. It's not like, oh, well, I didn't take it; it was in front of me.
Mm,
Create them. What can you do that gets you a little bit closer to finding out about something or that next
yeah.
thing to do? And do it because that's where the success is.
Yes. Create the opportunities, people. I think that's a wonderful note to end on. And I look forward to being in touch and continuing the conversation, I'm sure, in other ways.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. This was
Thank
fun.
you. Ciao for now. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Take care.